You mentioned rejection in correlation with that Baptist pastor, and then in a couple of the books, that was a title, or a subtitle of the book. So kind of help me understand how this rejection idea gets in there.
Because into every life some rejection must fall. When you get a person's history, you very seldom find anyone that grew up with no rejection. That may be minor and all, or it may be like this young man where he didn't know who his father was, that was rejection. His mother's in prison, and who knows what he went through. So he experienced all kinds of hurt and rejection, right? So we help a person understand that, usually in 20 or 30 minutes, see how they grew up and how they were treated. Till they say, now I can see why I feel that way. So it's usually pretty easy to spot rejection, and I call it the rejection syndrome. Because when a person is rejected, they reject themselves in some particular, and because that turn around reject others. And it just creates problems in relationships.
I see. So two of the main issues then you see are folks who are living for self, haven't died to self, or folks who have been rejected and haven't dealt with it.
That's the main one.
The main one.
And then that's shaped by rejection and hurt.
Okay, so living for self is the
That's the crux of the whole thing.
That's it. And then rejection tends to shape and...
So it shows how self reacts, acts and reacts. And what we do to help people is there's two kinds of rejection. Overt, obvious, where your head, or covert rejection. And one of the most common, like he's talking about, is overprotection or spoiling. If a child is spoiled, the parents do everything for the child. They do too much for them, give them too much, make too many decisions for them. So they do everything for the child except they become a person. So when he grows up, he doesn't know how to be a person because he's never allowed to learn. So if he can't become a person, then he's been destroyed as a person or rejected as a person. So when he grows up, it's typically difficult to make decisions because he never was allowed to make any growing up. And so spoiled, overtaken. So he has mixed emotions. He loves his parents because they've done everything for him, but inside he resents them because he doesn't know why, but he feels negative toward them. So you've heard of an older child that gets to 8 or 10 years old, he spits in his parents' face. I've been doing everything. I've done everything for him. He spits in my face. Well, he said, I'd like to be a people too. And I said, no, we'll be a people for you. So that covert rejection, a lot of people just don't understand why and why they act out that. I had one young gal attended a training. I lectured for an hour and a half on rejection. Then she set up an appointment with me. It took me an hour and a half to prove to her that her mother had rejected her. Now, she knew her father had because he beat her with some pretty big sticks. But her mother was a nice, real loving Oriental gal that did everything for her, And she got to be 20 years old and she was going down the street in front of her house, smashing out the windshield of the car with a brick bat. She didn't know why she was doing that. She was so angry. But she had to see that her mother had overprotected. She said, you think I've got a problem? My sister, who was 3 years younger, didn't have enough courage to go smash out windshield. And they had a brother who was 14 at the time. If he didn't want to get up, his mother would serve him breakfast in bed. 3 out of 3. But she had to see that her mother rejected her unintentionally, but she couldn't forgive her for it if she didn't admit that she did it. So to get free of it, she had to forgive her mother.
Gotcha. So you can either a parent could reject the child as a person, or the parent could basically reject the child's independence.
Yeah.
That's the covert you're talking about. So instead of you developing some level of independence and authority commensurate with your age, I'm just going to...
Exactly. Or like some children, infants, incubator for 2 or 3 months. They go from the womb to the tomb. And so here they don't have the snuggling and holding, nurturing those first 3 months, and they go home. They don't want to. That's covert rejection too. or the parents get killed or something when the kid's a year or two old. But to see what those things do to us and how they cause the negative feelings inside and usually negative behavior as well. But that's something everybody can understand and explain. Once they see it, it makes good sense.
So